What's up going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of the Barking Brown Show. I'm Jacob. That's Casey. Nick is on assignment today. He'll be back with us next week. We're brought to you, as always, by our friends at Homage Apparel. There's a link in the description down below if you're on the YouTube. If you're not on the YouTube, consider going to the YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, get a thumbs up, whatever the hell you want to do. Interact with the show on Twitter, Facebook, as well as YouTube. Comment in the comments. We will get your comments up. And if you got questions, want to talk free agency, we're going to dive into that kind of stuff. So fire away in the comments below. Casey, how you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. I actually picked up an homage shirt on Leap Day. They had a sale for Leap Day, so took full advantage of that. And hopefully by next Tuesday, I'll get to don it on the show.
There we go. They do these surprise pop-up sales, and I miss a lot of them, and then I find out about them like afterwards, and I'm like, shit, because there's usually one where I'm like, yeah, when this goes on sale, I'm gonna snag this one, but I'm not gonna pay full price for it or whatever.
Yeah, on the 29th, they did not all shirts, but a lot of select shirts were $29. They were normally like $40. So
$40 shirts, yeah.
Jumped on it.
You got to, man. Listen, I was talking to you beforehand. It's kind of interesting thinking about it, doing kind of the math. We are 6 days as of this show being live right now. We're 6 days from legal tampering. The NFL Combine's in the books. The draft is less than 2 months away at this point, like 6 weeks or so away for the draft. In 6 days, we will start to see all 32 teams' rosters really take shape. We'll start to see, you brought this up. There were some guys that were tagged today, some guys that teams elected not to tag today. Saquon Barkley for one, Christian Wilkins for one. Those are two really big name players, and Wilkins especially, who has been linked to your Cleveland Browns. But those are some big name players. Chris Jones, he's going to be a free agent. Mike Evans went ahead and extended, which probably means Baker Mayfield's going back, because I don't think he extends without knowing who his quarterback is likely going to be. So Baker Mayfield probably doesn't hit the open market, which really shrinks the quarterback market. Just a lot of things starting to take shape, man. And I'm really excited about it. Is there anything that kind of caught your eye that you've seen today or recently as free agency take shape that you're surprised, excited, or just kind of have some kind of thoughts on?
Not really surprised. Everything kind of is playing out. I got Pittman getting tagged by Indy. I saw that coming. Obviously, we had the Higgins news last week. Those look like they were going to happen. Wilkins not being tagged is a little surprising. He's going to be a premier defensive tackle hitting the market. But all in all, no, the Bears tagging Jalen Johnson, that's smart business. Cornerbacks they're hard to find, man. If you got a CB1, you keep a hold of them. The quarterback market, it still kind of all hinges on what field where they ship Fields to, in my opinion.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I think that's because Cousins is going to sign somewhere. Like that's going to be a big domino. I agree with you. I think Baker probably ends up back in Tampa Bay because Evans stated that he wanted to play with a veteran quarterback. He wasn't interested in going somewhere with a young quarterback. He's probably only got a few good years of juice left, and I think he understands that, and he wants to maximize that. So, yeah, nothing too surprising. But, yeah, man, it ramps up fast. It's Senior Bowl, all of a sudden Combine's on top of you, tags happen. Next thing you know, illegal tampering, and then it'll be kind of all systems go, man.
Yeah, for sure. The interesting thing some people were pointing out about Mike Evans, that when I thought he potentially was going to hit the market, and I kind of flirted with the idea that maybe the Browns would make a run at him, one thing that I pointed out, he had the most receiving yards he's had since 2018 with Baker Mayfield last year. So whatever you think or want to say about Baker Mayfield, the connection between him and Mike Evans was about as good as it gets when it comes between a quarterback and his number one wide receiver. And obviously there's some things here and there that can be cleaned up, but a little bit extra chemistry between Baker and Mike Evans going into a second season together, potentially, I think can really be something interesting. It makes sense to me why he went back, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Like, yeah, he wanted to stay in Tampa, but that is a good pair for him because he's a go up and get him kind of player. And when Baker misses, he misses high. Well, that works pretty fine with Mike Evans.
Yeah. Well, it didn't make sense to me why Tampa would want to move on from Mike Evans. You've been kicking the can down the road the whole time with this guy, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
You don't put up these kind of numbers, and he's going to crack 100 touchdowns. Usually, that's a milestone to put you in the Hall. 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons, like he's in rarefied air with that, So it just makes sense, man. Finish it out where you started it. If you came this far and done this much and had a rotating system of quarterbacks and is still produced, you land with Tom Brady, you win your Super Bowl, legacy cemented. Now you got Baker. I'll say this, man. Mike Evans has gotten some quarterbacks paid,
Yes,
Johnny drafted. It's going to get Baker paid again, shout out to Mike Evans, man, just being consistent. And in an age where, and we're lucky to have a non-diva wide receiver one. He's another one. He's not out there, you don't make it all about him. Trains his ass off. You have to be able to make it this far in your career, still be this prolific. So shout out to Mike Evans.
Absolutely, man. Hey, I want to start with some things that Mary Kay wrote on Cleveland.com, just because she put some names out there today. She had some names in a different piece too, and we'll get to that. That's happened in the last week. And I just kind of wanted to, as we talk about this, our free agency wish list, some of my guys are on these lists, just some guys that I'm really interested in. So for this episode, I'm kind of going to be, I think we're just going to go back and forth through some names, some guys that are out there. And if we want that, or, we'll discuss the players and if they make sense. So Mary Kay dropped an article today just talking about what should we expect when free agency starts next week, which also means trades start next week. I think they can happen now, but they can't become official until Wednesday. That's one of those really weird things, because like the legal tampering is, technically it's legal, but it's not official. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But anyway,
they could put whatever date they want on it. Legal tampering started at the combine. They can say whatever date they want, but that's when it really drums up.
I think what you can do is like just not talk to their official representative or whatever, because you can't say anything if it's just like, I was just seeing what he's looking for. Whatever. It's like, I didn't actually talk dollars and cents. I just happened to talk to somebody in the room that knew him. Anyway, one thing she kind of put out like some things they should expect. Number one was finding a backup quarterback, and to replace Joe Flacco. And her exact quote was, with Flacco set to test the market and possibly land an offer from a team like the Patriots, which makes so much sense with Alex Van Pelt going up there in the success. There was a lot of interceptions and things like that, but what Flacco did for the Browns is a million times better than anything the Patriots currently have on their roster. So it makes sense. And that Alex Van Pelt being there, getting to run the show and potentially bringing in a quarterback, albeit only worked with Flacco for 3 months or whatever it is. There's still a relationship there, and it makes it easier. This is Van Pelt's first chance as an offensive coordinator to be the guy. He's going to call plays unless he decides to have someone else call plays, which I don't know why they would do that. But, he's with the defensive minded head coach. So it makes a ton of sense to go there. So she talked about that there is a chance if Flacco doesn't go somewhere else that he comes back. And we've talked about that ad nauseum, so we're not going to address that. But she listed a couple of names, two of which are awful. She 3 names. I'm telling you, trust me, you think if you haven't read, and I know you haven't read this, so you don't know these names.
Blind, baby.
So trust me. So she kind of talked about they like DTR, but they're not sure he's going to be the number 2, and they want to carry 3. And I get it, because they had to use 5 last year, 4 really, because I don't think you get to really count Driscoll.
We keep throwing that out there too. They're like, well, they went through 5 quarterbacks. It's like that last one was ceremonial.
That last one was so that Joe Flacco and PJ Walker were both healthy for the playoff game, because they had just lost DTR in Houston in a game in garbage time. Like DTR goes down in garbage time. when he was out there on the field. So the first name she puts out there is Old Faithful. And let's talk about it. Casey, are you making a run at bringing Jacoby Brissett back to Cleveland?
It's price tag. Still comes down to price tag. I think he got paid 8 last year.
Yes.
You can't afford to pay your backup quarterback 8. Not with what
What's
you
the
have
number?
Invested. That you bring him back for? Half
For
that?
you.
4?
Okay.
4.6. Let's get saucy.
Really
But
specific.
yeah, throw some tax on it, But here's the thing. He can do what you need him to do. He's kind of system agnostic. He understands the way Stefanski works, even though we don't know what the offense is going to look like, what kind of new variations, what kind of new things are going to be. But he's athletic enough to run the other things.
Yeah.
That you would have trouble getting Flacco to do, So,
yeah.
And you feel comfortable, man. You feel comfortable that if you have to turn to him for a 4-game stretch, you're not smashing the panic button. You think you'll be okay.
Yeah, you can go 2-2. Yeah, like
right.
Maybe even 3-1. It depends on who you're playing. It depends on how Nick Chubb and the defense are playing and things like that. Yeah, for me, I think if you can keep that number around 5 or less for Jacoby, he's probably my number 1 in terms of who do I want as the backup quarterback that's not on the roster. Let's just DTR and Watson are on the roster. I think, barring some wild situation, they're both going to be on the roster. And so of the guys not on the roster, my number 1 is target. It's probably Jacoby Brissett. I like Flacco, but like kind of what you mentioned, I think they're moving past some of that stuff. And I know Jacoby's not a runner, like the same style of runner that Watson or DTR are, but I think he is much more athletic than
he's Jesse Owens compared to Flacco.
That's what I'm getting. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He's still a much better upgrade as an athlete than what Joe Flacco is, just from the athletic standpoint. And he doesn't turn the ball over the way Flacco does.
But he's sometimes overly cautious,
Yeah, that too.
Yep. But there's a rapport with Amari Cooper there and Njoku, so you feel good about him being your backup.
Yeah, he loves those two guys. And, the other names, Mitchell Trubisky or Marcus Mariota. Those are the names.
Okay, let's work backwards.
Okay.
Marcus Mariota can no longer throw a football. His shoulder has betrayed him. I don't like the word cooked gets overused, but it would be apropos. My guy's cooked.
Good athlete still. I think he's still a good athlete.
Yeah, he's a good athlete, and if you're in a run-first offense, shit, man. We saw what he did with Atlanta against us when Arthur Smith told him not to throw it. After he threw an interception to Denzel, and from that point, they didn't throw again for like 15 straight plays.
Yeah, it was stupid.
But no, I'm not interested in Marcus Mariota. Mr. Biscuit, as I call Trubisky, is boy, that doesn't move the needle for me at all.
No way. No way. Mm-mm.
No. He lost the backup job in Pittsburgh to Mason Rudolph. So, what are we doing, man? I get he's from the area. That don't mean shit to me. Literally nothing. I did nothing. So, are those all 3 of the names that she brought to the table?
Yes. She only brought 3.
I mean, she's not by a landslide then.
Yeah. Well, it's just funny because this article comes out today, and I just think it's really fun to go through because, there's just so many names. And when someone like Mary Kay, not that she'll get any of these right. She could get all of them right or none of them right. That's just kind of the nature of this business. But she has connections in the organization. And if those names are linked, if she's linking those names, they've at least kicked that around. They've at least thought
those names have been uttered in Berea.
Now, how seriously have they been uttered? I don't know, but they've been uttered if she's saying them. Interestingly enough, we have no comments. So if you guys got things to say your things. Say your things. Anyway.
Fire them off, baby.
Moving on, her second point was to talk about some wide receivers. The first name, There are so many. I don't know if it's a ton of people or if it's just that the only people I really saw talking about this before I got on this show both said this. So I don't know if it's a ton of people or if my data is just misconstrued. There's this love with Mike Williams. And it's a name that was mentioned. There, she names 4 wide receivers that she believes the Browns are interested in. Mike Williams being the first. That doesn't move the needle for me, man. Like, I get it. I know our network cohort, Mr. Tyler Johnson, talked about there was some interest before Mike Williams signed his current deal, the deal that he's getting released, right? Like, I think whatever. But the deal that he signed a couple of years ago with the Chargers, Andrew Berry was known to have had some interest in that. And I remember that because I thought it was fun. That was before they got Amari Cooper. But when I look at this wide receiver room, he's too similar to Amari Cooper and Cedric Tillman, and I would rather have both of those guys over Mike Williams. And the injuries and everything that's happened with him, for me, I'm all the way out on Mike Williams. I've got no interest.
Dude's never available, man. Dude's always injured.
Yeah.
The only time he ever balled out was in a contract year. I am super leery of those type of players. And he balled out that contract year. And since then he's been nothing but hurt and slower, and I know everybody will point back to one thing. They'll be like, we played with Watson in college. Well, again, that's like living in Cleveland. I don't give a shit. I don't care what he did 8 years ago. They're not the same. Neither of those dudes are the same person. You know what I mean? So I'm all the way out on Mike Williams. To me, Mike Williams is like Costco brand, like Mike Evans. You know what I mean? Like, he's like the lesser, more injured version of Mike. Like, yeah, he can get deep and he's a big dude, but he's never available. Yeah.
He's got 7 years in the NFL. He's played 7 seasons. He's got 2 1,000-yard seasons. In one of them, he had 1,001 yards.
Yeah. Okay. How many times does he play every game?
I don't have games up. Hold on, let me pull it up. I just had stats. If you look at it from when you go to, I like to look at PFF because they do a ton of the breakdowns of stats really well, but they don't list games played as easily to find. Okay, so starting in 2017, which is his rookie year, he played 10 games, 16 games. So he did twice.
Okay.
Twice, yes. So 16 games, 15, 15, 16, 13, 3. So he's played now starts 1, 5, 15, 11, 14, 13, 3. Yeah. So he's played in a lot of games. He's played in 88, started 62, 4,800 yards in 88 games, 31 touchdowns. I mean, he's fine, but that contract he got, I know he's not going to get what he got on that last contract because of what happened after he got it. But a guy that has shown what he has at least shown at times is still going to get money because good wide receivers don't hit the market very often. And when decent ones, because I consider him a decent one, the market's overinflated. Like, think about this. I just saw this before we came on here. Odell Beckham, Spot Track, who does a lot of over the cap's way better. But one thing that Spot Track does is they do a decent job of gauging the market for a player. They have Odell Beckham's market at $11.5 million next year. And he hasn't had 1,000 yards since 2019 with Freddie Kitchen. So what I'm saying is I think Mike Evans brings more than Odell Beckham if he's on the field at this point. So Mike Williams is going to get $10+ million, and that limit is not worth the squeeze to me.
I look at Mike Williams as a reclamation project. So in order for me to be interested in that, it's got to be like 5 or less.
6.
And it won't be, period. So no.
It'll be double digits.
On Mike Williams.
Our good friend Check It In, he says that he thinks he's feeling big time trade. You know, a lot of people have said that. I'm in a really weird place. I was talking to a friend of the show, Connor, on Twitter. He's at Connor _ 29 Clee. I can't remember. I don't think he has his last name on there, but I've had a ton of conversations with him over the last couple of years on Twitter and stuff. And he was just kind of like, this is what I would like to do. You know, he was like listening to some guys. I'm like, I don't know if they're going big or not. Like the biggest thing is they haven't restructured all the deals and freed up the cap that they're going to yet. So I have really no idea where their headspace is in that sense. But I'll put it this way. While I'm not holding my breath that they take a massive swing, because I don't think they need to. I think they need to add solid players, really good players, because I think the nucleus is there. I would not at all be shocked if they did take a big swing. I don't think it's at wide receiver, though. If it's a big swing, I think it's on the defensive line.
Great wide receivers do not hit free agency.
Exactly.
If you're going to get someone, it's going to be through a trade.
That's true.
I was talking with Brad Ward, and we were bouncing around names. Like me and you talked, and Randy talked about AJ Brown.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to happen, but that would constitute a big name. Someone I would keep an eye on is Terry McLaurin. They're kind of tearing things down to the studs.
Oh, I love that. I'd
make a play. I could see them making a play for that. That'd be something that'd probably, they need secondary help. I know someone we could trade him with a second round pick and take Terry McLaurin off your hands. So I could see it. I don't know about. Here's the thing, man. Everybody loves the fucking Avengers. They want just a stacked roster. Not everyone's going to be a superstar, man. Sometimes you got to fill roles and you have to fill voids, and that might be a solid player that's not a sexy name. Well, so I'm with you. I think that's more likely than them making a big splash household name type trade.
So for me too, I like to look at you talk about like not everybody being a superstar, but quality signings. I mean, did most people know who Ogbo Okoronkwo was? Like, he was one of my favorite guys because I knew he wouldn't break the bank. He would cost something, but he was a really quality player. I would say most fans probably didn't, unless they followed Houston a little bit closely or they followed him in college or he was with LA as well before Houston. If they had followed that, they might have known. But most people probably didn't know who he was. But I would say he was really impactful this year, was he not?
Yeah, but that's someone you had to know who he was. You were probably paying attention to efficiency ratings and win rates, and you're probably pretty well in the weeds to know who someone like Ogbo was ahead of time.
Yeah, but that's like the kind of stuff that I still think they'll do. Is
exactly no, that's exactly. He was a rotational guy who when they brought him here, we thought he was going to see a bigger role, but they still like him in that NASCAR type scenario where you can get a bunch of speed on the field at one time. And he was highly impactful, and I think he'll continue to be. I think that'll be someone that probably won't see north of 600-700 reps, but he'll be very efficient when he's in and do his role. And you need players like that, man. You have to have it. So
yeah, I'm with you. Okay, the three other names she threw out there. Calvin Ridley. We've talked about Calvin Ridley on this show before. I've written up. I'm all on the Calvin Ridley train.
Yeah.
That is exactly what they need. Curtis Samuel is another name. That makes a lot of sense because I liked him last year. And Marquise Brown from the Cardinals. Calvin Ridley is far and away of the four names she listed the best one for me. Curtis Samuel, he's a role player, but I could see that being a solid signing because it's not going to break the bank and he would do what you need him to do. And same with Marquise Brown. I think they're looking for a vertical threat. But Marquise Brown, Curtis Samuel are pretty much one-trick ponies where Calvin Ridley, I think, can do more than one thing. So it depends on what you're willing to spend, but any of those names do anything for you.
Well, this wide receiver room, in my opinion, is devoid of an actual number 2 receiver, and I think Calvin Ridley fits that bill. I think you get a legitimate 2 who can do multiple things. He can get deep, but he's a route runner, man. He's a technician.
Yep.
So I'm in on that. Marquise Brown, I think, is going to cost too much for that one trick that he does.
Yep.
And I've never, man, Samuel's always underperformed in my eyes.
He has.
So
I just
I
think
don't,
he's
that doesn't do anything for me. Samuel doesn't.
yeah, for me, I think he's just cheap. Like that's I mean, because I was good with him last year. I agree. He's not gonna blow you out of the water with anything. But if you are looking just to sign that one trick pony, he's probably the one whose price tag for the one thing he can do makes sense. I think is kind of, in my opinion, that's kind of where I am with that one. Okay. She talked about edge rushers if they are unable to retain Zadarius Smith.
Yeah, which, hold on, we won't know that for a long time. He's not someone who's going to rush back to the table to sign a deal.
Yeah, probably. But I will say this about the Browns. I would not be surprised if they move past any offer they give Zadarius Smith if he chooses to drag it out. Like,
yeah. No, they have to. You have to.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to. You can't get left at the altar at the last minute if someone steps in and you are banking on that dude coming back.
Yeah.
So you have to prepare as if he's not.
Because it's not, yeah, because they're not going to risk what they did with Jadeveon Clowney the second time, which was wait until July to sign. It's just, I understand he's going to test the market. Maybe the Browns give him a big contract. I would bring him back. I would find a way to bring him back. I would try to make him an offer that I thought was fair for both sides, but was enticing enough to bring him back, because I think the freedom that he gives you with Myles Garrett and with Ogbo, just because he can play inside just like Myles can, you can move him around and all the things he can do. I thought he was a better run defender than I had seen him be in recent years in there. I thought he made some impact plays there. And it's just, when you've got a guy that lines up all over the field like Zadarius, which is also what Myles does, you just get so many different ways, different things you can throw at offenses. And you saw that work really, really well for the Browns defense in 2023. So if you're able to, I would make him an offer. But my thing is,
they'll make him an offer. They'll make him an offer.
That's all I'm saying. I would give him one quickly and say, hey, this is what it's going to be. Maybe you do a little bit of back and forth. If it drags on, you go after somebody else.
Well, it's risky if you're Zadarius. Say they offer him 9, right. 1 year, 9. And he's like, okay, you think he might be able to get 10 or 11 on the open market, so he's going to hold out. But say that draft comes around and say Darius Robinson all of a sudden is available.
Yeah.
You might make that move, man. And then all of a sudden that's an afterthought. Then you're running, you're going to have Alex Wright probably be your starter right off rip, rotate Ogbo, but you also got Isaiah McGuire already in the pipeline. And if you got a young guy like Darius Robinson or Brandon Dorless or Braylon Trice, there's some of these names of guys that
Isaac,
could be right. Like, and then all of a sudden, you just kind of move off that. Who else did you name?
So it's funny because the first one is kind of interesting just because his sack numbers aren't crazy. Jonathan Grenard, the pass rusher from another Houston pass rusher. What's that do for you?
3-4 outside guy. It's kind of hard to just supplant and see what he's going to be in a 4-3. Obviously, was highly productive this past year. Light kind of clicked on for him, former first round pick. They opted not to get his fifth year option. He tests the market. I think he'll probably go to a 3-4 team. I don't think they'll go to a 4-3. Just my opinion.
Yeah, he's fine. I just don't know. I don't know. I think he's fine. I guess it depends on the contract, but I would rather roll with what you've got and draft a guy than Jonathan Grenard. I think he'll get a little bit more in the market than I'm probably willing to pay. So
yeah, I mean, he had a good year last year, so he should cash in on that, and by all means.
Oh, that's my thing too. Is like, I will never judge a dude for going out and getting his money. Like because that's what I would do. If another place offered me more money right now, would I leave my job? Probably, and so would most of you.
Yes, facts.
If given the opportunity, especially if the job is the same job, which
Yeah,
is essentially what football is. You're just playing, maybe a different leadership style, but you're still doing the same job with another team who's giving you more money. Other names: Chase Young, AJ Epineza.
Sounds crazy because if you'd have said this shit to me 2 years ago, I'd have been all over Chase Young.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of bad tape.
A lot.
All the tools are there, and he's bounced around now. I've seen him all. And here's the thing, though. Everywhere he's been opposite a good dude. It ain't like he's just by himself when their teams are double teaming him and he can't get it done. Like he was just, he was opposite of Sweat for a few years. It worked early on, but they kind of fizzled out. Sweat, to my eyes, was the better pass rusher. And then you go to San Francisco with a Bosa, and he would flash. I mean, he's got crazy ability, though. When you're that talented physically, you got to do more than flash. Got to. And that's just who he is to me. Epineza, that's a dude, man. Like I'd be interested in that. That's something that does move the needle for me.
My thing is all about like what's the length and the structure for Chase Young? Because the only thing for me that concerns me is the injury history, which is not, the 2022, he missed some time in 21 and 22, basically. I think he missed a couple of games this year. Yeah, he didn't play like the first game. I think he was still coming back. And I think he played at times a little bit sparingly for San Francisco. And then they had the weird stuff in the playoffs where they were wondering about. But my thing is like, man, Andrew Berry loves them 1 year reclamation project first rounders.
He does highly athletic testers who may be underperformed. You can get him. I don't know how cheap you're going to be able to get him, man.
What? He has 10? Did he have 10 sacks this year, I think? I'm always interested because it's always funny because I know we talk about sack numbers not being the be all end all. 7.5. He had 7.5 sacks this year, which is tied his career high. That's what he had as a rookie.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It'd be different if I didn't think he'd been in some good rooms
or less.
He's going to get more than that just off name value.
That's true.
To me, he looks like Tarzan and plays like Jane. Like, I don't know. In one hand, you could say, you get a guy with those physical characteristics in a room with Myles Garrett under someone as aggressive as Jim Schwartz. See what he can do if you can get him on the cheap, but I just don't think you're going to get him on the cheap. Don't think it's an option.
Yeah, I think it's all about if he's a 1 year reclamation project type contract, I would do it. Just because, especially it depends because the guaranteed number, that's my thing when I talk about the structure of the contract, not just what the cap number is or what the number is, but what the cap hit is and how you spread it out. Is it like a $3.5 million guaranteed and he can earn up to 10? Because if you earn all the way up to 10 because you produce on the field, nobody gives a shit, right? Like, if you produce
100%,
I don't I don't give a shit what I pay you if you earned that. But if I give you $8 million guaranteed for 4 sacks, I'm gonna have a problem with something like that. And I know sack numbers are the be all end all. He finishes with over 60 quarterback pressures. Actually, just about the same number as Zadarius Smith. Believe it or not. But there's way more consistent tape out of Zadarius. Obviously, he's done a lot more in the league. Mm-hmm. But at his age, the question is, are any of
that's legit.
And do you feel good about Chase Young's medicals? He looked fine in terms of health-wise this year. So, didn't, because you know how it was. The conversations in the offseason leading up and everything, people were like, I don't know if I would go with Chase Young because I'm concerned about if he's going to miss more time, and he was pretty healthy this year, so that he has that going for him. If it's incentive laden and you're betting on ups, I love betting on traits when you do 1 year deals. So if you're he's got all the traits, and I would
Yes.
love to see, as long as it's not my money. To be honest with you, Andrew Barry really navigates the cap really well. So if Andrew Barry hands out a contract he's comfortable with, I'm probably comfortable with that. So, but I would call him, I guess is what I'm getting at. I would definitely call him and see what the demands are, because I think there is a world in which that move makes a ton of sense.
No, hey, he's traded up. I mean, like you said, man, they love Barry loves going after those high athletic profile reclamation projects.
Kind of worked
And
for Maurice
we
Hurst.
don't dwell on sacks. Like that's a fact. I'm not going to be like, oh, 60 pressures is decent, man. That's a decent amount of work.
Yeah.
I would expect more out of Chase Young.
Yeah, you should. He's got traits to be a 70, 80 sack.
He's
guy.
underperformed.
Sure.
I don't think there's any other
yeah.
way to slice it.
Yeah, and I honestly, even though there was some effort stuff this year, outside of his rookie year, it was his best year. I mean, he was obviously healthy this year for the most part after he came back from last year's injury, but
he's never been in a bad line, dude. He's never been in a bad.
Yeah.
It isn't like he's just the lone guy and everyone's keying on him. Like that dude's always had talent around him on the line at least.
Yeah, no, I know, I get it, and that's why my thing was there's some stipulations to that. The contract.
Yeah. If you can get incentive laden, all for it, man.
Yeah, it's all about, like, is someone going to give him something guaranteed, or is he going to have to go bet on himself? Because if he goes and bets on himself, it becomes an interesting thing. Okay, so somebody got informed of his release today. That's very interesting. Linebacker Jerome Baker is getting released by the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Yay or nay on kicking the tires on the veteran linebacker, which
my boy's the thumper.
Oh yeah.
Which is something that's lacking in that room from the inside position. I don't know. It's weird too, because like the way I'm looking at linebacker is period. You need someone to pair with JOK. You need to find him a running mate. Yeah. By hook or by crook. And when I'm looking at the draft, I see a couple guys that I like. I just think you have to use that 85 to get them. And I don't know if they're going to do that.
Right.
I don't know if they're going to be willing, because it's not a deep linebacker class, brother.
It's not very good.
But there are some dudes, but they're all lumped at the very top. And
that second, third round range, because there's no first rounders.
Yeah.
There's, Peyton Wilson's got he would be a first rounder if he didn't have the medicals. And, there's about 4 or 5 guys. And then after that, it's just like, man, maybe there's some special teamers out there. So if you're looking to get a starter, it's going to be in free agency.
85. I'm looking at 85.
And
I don't think that is. I think you have enough needs, and it's a good draft for offensive tackle. It's a good draft for wide receiver. You only got, unless you maneuver some stuff. So I think they might have to go the free agency route to find that guy. You could talk me into Baker. You could. It's all this, the caveat. All this depends on contract.
Yeah.
All this depends on what that dude's trying to get paid. But I like his work between the tackles, man. I like what Jerome Baker can, and that's where this defense needs to get stronger, is between the tackles.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it when you started it. It's about finding a running mate for JOK, because JOK is the dude in that room, in the middle, kind of playing all over the place. They move him around. He's not a Mike backer, but like in the middle of that defense, the heart of that defense, it's JOK. And I mean, a guy that is athletic and can bring the wood behind him, because there's a lot of times where JOK he makes the play in a sense that he sets up a teammate to make the play. Mm-hmm. Like it happens quite often with him, where it's just kind of like, he comes flying through there and he makes the running back. The running back might make him miss, but it causes the running back to hesitate in the backfield. And if there's somebody that can come crashing downhill behind him, that play gets made. And I think there were times last year where that just didn't happen. And, the Browns are interested in bringing back Sione Takitaki, and I like Taki a lot. I just think I would like to find an upgrade over him and Anthony Walker at Mike. And that's not Anthony Walker at this point, man. The injuries are adding up. He's not a spring chicken. He's not the fastest, most athletic guy anymore. And I'm not sure. I'm kind of moving past that. I like Taki, but I would like Taki a lot better if he was my third linebacker.
That's it. I mean, Taki's your starting Sam and backup Mike. Like that's fine. It's a great role for him. But I don't know, man. Give me Edgerrin Cooper. Find a way. Find a way to get that dude on the field, man.
There's an interesting idea when it comes to the idea of drafting one of those linebackers. Because drafting one of those linebackers potentially in the third round, a lot of people are talking about, they've got that gap. They go from 55 to 85 to what's like 135 or something like that, I think is their first round pick. And the possibility that Andrew Berry does something trading back to add another top 100 pick. Maybe he moves back into the high 60s and still, or I'm sorry, like the low 60s to like 60 or 62 or something like that. And maybe packages a late round pick to add a third or something in there. That kind of makes a lot of sense where if they trade back and add a second, third rounder and they've got a 2 and 2 3s, I could see that being the scenario that a linebacker happens because they haven't put a ton of value in the position. They've spent multiple they've done day two capital, and JOK kind of being the exception of the rule because it was this just absolute physical athletic specimen where it was like, if we can mold this ball of clay into the right ball of clay, like it's got all the makings to be a superstar. And we kind of saw that this year. They haven't really gone crazy spending or draft capital. Jacob Phillips was a third round pick. They do a couple essentially vet minimum deals for Anthony Walker. Sione Takitaki was a previous regime, but he's a day 3 pick. He was a 4th rounder. Yep. It's like, but if someone is in that range, that shouldn't be. Which is what JOK was. JOK got into the 50s and he had no business being there. And that's when all of a sudden the quote unquote value they put on linebacker changed because of what was available. So is there a scenario where they trade back, let's say so they've got 85. Let's say they trade back in somewhere and they get pick 90 or 91. Let's say they've got a couple of picks in the third at 85 and 91. They're right there. And at 85, they get their offensive tackle. Maybe they go wide receiver, offensive tackle, or whatever. But they get a wide receiver and maybe an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, because I think there's some exciting defensive linemen as well. And then they're like, man, this wide receiver class is really, really deep. And Edgerrin Cooper is still here at 91. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden it's like, should he still be there at 91? No. But could he be, because the class is just not good and there's so many other players that teams are going to value above that position to where he kind of slips.
It's a devalued position, so that pushes it down automatically.
How many teams are playing with 3 linebackers? Nobody, you know what I mean? Base defenses are nickel defenses nowadays. So linebacker value, it's not a premium position, and a guy just falls to 91, 92, and you've already hit defensive tackle and wide receiver or offensive tackle and safety or whatever and gotten 2 really good football players, and you're like, man, we just don't have a long-term guy next to JOK, and something falls like that. That's a scenario I think they really would entertain. Or if they add a 4th round pick and someone slides there.
I mean, some of those linebackers, well, it just depends on what your cup of tea is. And I'm not high on a lot of these guys,
Yeah, it's Yeah, it's yeah.
It's a thin class, but it's a devalued position even in college because these teams are running spreads. You know what I mean? So it's just not producing. You're getting these kids that are playing 7-on-7s, basically like AAU traveling teams, 7-on-7. So it's producing this crop of wide receivers year in and year out. There's not going to be a year where we come to here and say this is a bad wide receiver draft. That shit ain't going to happen. Like
No,
that, but there's a trade-off. Some of those power positions that were traditional, 10 years ago, they're just getting weaned out, man. So and it's a lot of tweener stuff. It's a lot of guys that are big box safeties.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that might transition to linebacker at the next level, or they might have to transition from linebacker to safety because being a safety is more valuable because there's more safeties on the field than there are linebackers now.
So we've talked about a lot of names.
Mm-hmm.
Some names that have been rumored out there. We talked a little draft. We talked about some of these guys that are available. So what we're going to do to wrap this up, I'll start with you. We'll go a couple names. Do me a name on offense, and then I'll do a name on offense, and we'll go back to a name on defense. But assuming the Browns can manage the cap, which they can do, what is the dream offensive signing for you next week?
And it is not even dream. And I'm going to cheat because I don't play by the rules.
Sure.
I'm just being realistic. I'm being realistic with my approach here. If I get to bring 2 free agents that I think are realistic targets, free agents,
right,
and they're in one of them, because I think you're drafting a wide receiver no matter what, even if you add a free agent.
Absolutely.
I don't think that's true at running back. I don't think you're adding a free agent running back and drafting a free. That's not happening. So if I were to go this route, I'm bringing Zach Moss in, taking care of my running back situation for this year, and I'm adding DJ Chark as my free agent receiver, and I'm drafting a piece. But I think Chark will be cheap enough that it doesn't hamstring you. So those would be the 2 offensive players that I think are realistic targets that would add quality to this roster.
I've been trying to get DJ Chark to Cleveland for like 3 years now. Like
I gave up last year. Last year I didn't. I campaigned. Last year I took off. I'm back on because he's cheaper now. And he gives you a skill set. You're chasing these guys that do this. Like you're chasing Mike Williams. Well, just give me DJ Chark who can run more routes and gives me the same deep threat.
I think he's got. I was gonna say, I think he's got more speed than Mike Williams.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
I just keep seeing that, and he's cheaper. So
he can do things. He can do more things than Mike Williams, I guess, is probably the way I would put it. It's like, he can do these things. Yeah. With DJ Chark, I tried a little bit last year, but it wasn't like the year before. Like I wrote like an article at the beginning of free agency, and then I was like, I bet you what, you know what? I'm gonna write like 5 articles and put DJ Chark in all of them, just like I did the year before, and they're not gonna sign him. So I only did like 1 or 2, a little bit of campaigning, and then I was right. So there's probably a good chance you can, I I have no problems with that. I guess Zach Moss is a great. So this is what I'll say. For all intents and purposes, we'll both do 2 offense, 2 defense, and I won't pick the same ones. But Zach Moss is, I would say, I'm going to bring this up, probably who I would have picked as if I had one person to do. So I would say, running back makes a ton of sense because it's a weird running back class where there's not a first rounder. It's like linebacker. There's like a group of them in that 2 to 4, second to fourth round range. And then there's some guys late. Like I think Frank Gore Jr., if you got him in like the 6th round, is at least intriguing just to see what you could do with it. So I'm not sure. There's some names in the draft if they decide to go that route that I think they're good with, but I would probably think they're looking for something proven there.
That's it. Chubb's hurt. Like if Chubb's not hurt and he's fully healthy, yes, you invest and you can draft, but you need someone who might be able to be your starter today, So that's the reason it draws me towards Zach Moss.
So if I'm going for somebody that I campaigned for last year and they had some interest in and they were aiming towards it, a dream on offense is DeAndre Swift. I don't know that DeAndre Swift, they'll go that route. And I get it because some people are going to kind of look at Swift and say that they think he's probably best as a complementary piece, kind of in terms of a great pass catcher out of the backfield, can do some of the things you like as a runner, but you don't know if you're going to use him as a bell cow, so to speak. Like, I think some teams would say, no, I don't want to do that. But I'm looking at it as like, if you, the biggest thing when I look at that position and what I want to do in free agency is kind of like, I like Jerome Ford, but I don't want it to just be Jerome Ford because Chubb might not be ready week 1. So whoever you bring in could be the starter to begin the year.
Yep.
And if Chubb got hurt again, for example, I would like someone with Jerome Ford. And I think that guy can be DeAndre Swift. I know the team had some interest in DeAndre Swift. Apparently, MC is in my computer, and he saw the draft of my latest mock draft throwing out Jalen Wright.
I saw your latest mock draft.
Yeah, that'll be published tomorrow or Thursday, but that's interesting. Anyway, I like DeAndre Swift if they go that route, especially running back on the offensive side of the ball. And then I'm torn about this other one on offense, and that's just because I like a lot of these pieces in the draft, and I think they probably go to the draft more likely than not. But man, I'd sign Jonnu Smith. I would sign Jonnu Smith at tight end and put him there with David Njoku, and you still have Jordan Akins, because even though Akins really underperformed last year, he's got a relationship with Watson, and he's not that expensive. If you look at what like they've got with Jordan Akins, that's a pretty veteran minimum style of contract, so they're probably going to roll with that. But if you could get if you could make a run in Jonnu Smith, get him away from Arthur Smith's offense.
That's exactly where I was going.
He still had almost 600 yards, which is
he's going to Pittsburgh, bro.
Which is like 3 times. Yeah, he probably is. But he had nearly 3 times the yard. And nearly 3 times the yardage as Harrison Bryant and Jordan Akins did combined last year. So that's me on offense. So where are you at on defense?
This is a weird one for me because I have it's a crush. It is, man. You've heard me talk about this guy, and I'll insert him in conversations he has nothing to do with. And that is the guy. When I look at Darius Robinson from Missouri, I see Danico Autry. Danico Autry's available. Love that inside-outside versatility. I would slam the Danico Autry train. Get on that. Maybe it's irrational, but I think that he can play 2 positions that you definitely need, a starter at one and depth at the other at bare minimum. So that'd be the first defensive player I would go to. And I think that there's going to be a domino effect. I look at Jordan Brooks from Seattle, linebacker, and I'm very intrigued by him. I know that they're not going to try to re-sign him. McDonald's going there. They're probably going to make a run at Queen. I like Jordan Brooks, man. I would take him in a heartbeat.
DJ Reader would make a lot of sense at defensive tackle. Browns fans are familiar with DJ Reader and what he's done for years in Cincinnati, especially as a run defender. Like, he's gonna. I think he'll be 30. I think he's 20. Yeah, I think he'll be 30 this season. And he's had some injury. I saw someone on Twitter basically say the only thing that could stop DJ Reader when he was in Cincinnati was if he got hurt, because when he was on the field, he was a problem. And I think if you put him, especially early downs next to Dalvin Tomlinson and on the goal line and things like that, I still think there's plenty in the tank, especially as a run stopper for DJ Reader. So I don't know what his market value is going to be.
Coming off an injury plagued season, he's going to get less than he got last time. I would say that's pretty fair, right?
Yeah, I would think in his last, I think his last contract was like 13 million. I think last year he was at 13, but yeah, he'll go up. So we'll see what his market value is. He may price himself out, but I really think they'll make a run at either him or Christian Wilkins. I think the chance that they go after Christian Wilkins after they let him walk out of Miami, like,
yeah, it's going to take a bag to net that guy, though.
Yeah, but like, who was it? Was it you that I was talking to that was like, guys this good at 20? He's 28. He just turned 28.
Yeah.
Like, Christian Wilkins is 28, still in his prime, coming off of another great season. He had 58 pressures last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the thing, too, man. I mean, I follow fighting, and in fighting, like in mixed martial arts, the smaller you are, the earlier prime is. But these guys that are bigger, it's later. Heavyweights, much later, you know. And that's similar for defensive tackles. Defensive tackles, it's hard to be great out the gate. I don't give a shit where you were drafted. Like, that is a position you got to learn at the next level. You know what it takes to fend off these giants trying to move you off your spot. And Wilkins is just really coming into his prime. You know, for him to hit the market, he's going to command a big salary. I do want to throw one more defensive player into this mix, and it's someone that I've been pretty high on. We talked about him when we played him against the Colts this year. Kenny Moore, cornerback Kenny Moore. Dude can play nickel, man. Dude can play in the slot. He's feisty as shit against the run. If the Browns are to trade a certain player, which I think they could, they'd be in the market, you know. And I know you got Cam Mitchell, someone who could step in. I just think a player like Kenny Moore really solidifies that back end.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I've got no problem with that. That sounds like a thing. So next time we see you guys, it'll be next Tuesday. Tampering will have begun. More than likely enough, we'll have a move or two to talk to, I would say.
Yeah. They'll you know, keep Schefter on your alerts, you know, Rappaport, the like. It'll be fast moving.
The things they fly pretty good. And you know, the advantage is that for me at work, it'll be spring break, so we won't be as crazy busy next week.
Yeah.
There's some moments that will be, but in terms of what it normally is, you know, it's like
same for me. We're in the middle of a national mail count, which is just my job's way of justifying itself. So everything's documented, it's super stressful, but we'll be past that as of Friday. So my next week will be much easier as well.
Yeah, I hear you. All right. We appreciate you guys. That's it for us this week. We'll talk to you guys again next week. And until then, go Browns.